Have you ever tried to compare two sustainability reports and felt like you were comparing apples to, well, oranges? It makes it almost impossible to figure out a company's real impact. Well, a huge change from the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI, is tackling that problem head-on. Today, we're going to demystify the new GRI sector standards and, most importantly, figure out what happens when one company has its hands in a bunch of different industries at once.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the reporting challenge that GRI is trying to solve. Then, we'll get into their three-part system. We'll peek inside a standard, meet the first four that have been released, and then we'll tackle the big one. How in the world do you report accurately when your company's operations are all over the map?
Okay, first things first. Before we can really get the solution, we have to understand the problem, right? So why did GRI feel the need to create this whole new layer of standards in the first place?
It really all boils down to this one question. For years, trying to compare sustainability reports from two different companies, even in the exact same industry, was a total headache. It was like they were speaking different languages. The data was just everywhere.
And this inconsistency, well, it comes from a few really big issues. You've got cherry picking, where companies only show you the good stuff. You get inconsistent data, so you can't benchmark anything. And that makes it pretty much impossible for people like investors or the public to compare who's doing well and who isn't. But the biggest problem was often the huge gaps. Companies just weren't reporting on the most critical impacts for their specific industry.
So how do you fix a mess like that? Well, GRI's answer is a much stronger three-part system. And these sector standards, they're the brand new piece of the puzzle, and they are built specifically to create consistency right where it matters the most. The easiest way to think about it is like three layers of a cake. At the bottom, you have the universal standards. That's the foundation for literally everyone. Then you add the sector standard that applies to your specific industry. And finally, you use the topic standards to give all the juicy details on the impacts you've identified. It all works together.
And here is the genius of it. Sector standards basically create a common yardstick. They identify the topics that are most likely to be super important for an entire industry. This forces everyone to focus on the impacts that actually matter, and, finally, creates a level playing field for reporting.
And let's be crystal clear about this. This is not a friendly suggestion. This is mandatory. If a sector standard exists for your industry, you have to use it if you want to claim your report is in accordance with the GRI standards. For investors and watchdog groups, this is an absolute game changer.
All right, so what do these things actually look like on the inside? Well, to make them easy to use, GRI gave them all a consistent structure. So if you learn how to navigate one, you pretty much know how to navigate them all. Every standard kicks off with an intro and a super clear definition of which sector it covers. Then it gives you a sector profile, which is basically the context for its big sustainability challenges. But the real heart of the standard, the most important part, is the list of likely material topics. This is the roadmap for a company's report. And that term, likely material topics, is so important. These aren't just random suggestions someone dreamed up. They are the product of tons of research and conversations with all sorts of stakeholders to pinpoint a sector's biggest impacts. Think of it like a pre-approved list of what a company in that field really needs to be talking about. Now, GRI didn't just start anywhere. They went straight for the sectors with some of the heaviest sustainability footprints. So let's meet the first four standards that have been rolled out. So the first wave targets these major extractive and primary production industries. You've got GRI 11 for oil and gas, GRI 12 for coal, and GRI 13, which actually bundles agriculture, aquaculture, and fishing all together. And then there's GRI 14 for mining. But check this out. It specifically excludes oil, gas, and coal. Why? Because they already have their own dedicated standards. And now for the main event. What on earth happens when a huge, complex company doesn't fit neatly into just one of these boxes? This is where things get really interesting and where the true power of these standards comes out. I mean, this happens all the time with big, vertically integrated corporations, right? A single company can easily have operations that fall under two or even more of these new standards. So what do? Do they just get to pick their favorite? Nope. The rule could not be clearer. There is no picking and choosing. If a company has substantial activities in more than one of these sectors, it is required to use all of the applicable sector standards. It's all about getting the complete, honest picture. Let's make this real with an example. Imagine a giant mining company. Part of their business is digging up thermal coal. That means they absolutely, 100%, must use GRI 12. But what if that same company also has huge operations pulling other minerals out of the ground, like copper or lithium? Well, that activity falls right under GRI 14.
So the bottom line is simple. They have to use both, not one or the other. To be in line with the standards, this company is required to apply both GRI 12 times and GRI 14. And this is so important because it stops a company from hiding its more controversial coal impacts by only reporting under its other, less impactful mining activities.
But what does using both actually mean day to day? It's not about doing double the work or reporting everything twice. It means the company has to do a complete review. They have to look at all 22 likely material topics from the coal standard, plus all 25 from the mining standard, and then use that entire combined list to figure out what's truly material for their whole operation.
Okay, let's boil this all down to the absolute essentials. 1, sector standards are here to finally fix reporting inconsistency. 2, they are a mandatory, non-negotiable part of GRI reporting. 3, their structure is designed to help everyone pinpoint the most significant impacts. And 4, the big one, companies have to use all applicable standards for all of their major activities, no exceptions.
So that leaves us with one last, really powerful question to think about. With this new requirement for comprehensive, multi-sector reporting, how is our ability to see a company's true, unvarnished impact actually going to change? This is a massive shift toward real transparency, and we're just starting to see the effects.